Hi there, and welcome to the 32nd episode of Career Stories Live. So I am joined by Jo Wilkinson from Running Jo Limited, based in the UK, who is a sports coach and passionate about getting women into sport and coaching. So welcome, Jo. Thank you for joining me.
Hi there. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's really cool to see you. So, Jo is my running coach for anyone that's watching. So, I found Jo on Instagram when I was looking for a running coach to help me with my next marathon. And myself and my friend Mel were very happy that she agreed to take us on because she is an elite athlete after all. So, thank you again. So if you're watching, please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're from, and feel free to ask any questions or share your experience in the comments. If you're watching on replay, then let us know and I can add those comments later on. So just a very quick background into my life. So I've always been interested in what people do and why they do it. I like learning about different roles and career paths, which is what gave me the idea for these lives. And the idea really is to inspire thought for people. And hopefully the guests will give some advice that will help people. So Jo, over to you. Can you give us a brief intro into you and what it is you're doing right now?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm obviously Jo Wilkinson. I'm well known as Running Jo. So when I set up my business and thought, what can I call it? Throughout my entire life, people have called me Running Jo. So that seemed quite a nice, natural move, and it really sums up what I do. I run. I absolutely love running, and I've been quite fortunate to actually run at some high levels, so representing Great Britain and England over a period of time. And now I'm a full-time running coach. I run my own business. I do a whole variety of coaching, including people like Sarah, and I coach all the way up. I lead some England teams, and I work on a talent program as well. So pretty much running and coaching.
Brilliant. Excellent. I can see we've got a few people that have joined. So we have got John. So John is actually based in Chicago. So as you know, I'm running Chicago Marathon. So John's been giving me some tips on things to do
Yeah,
when I'm
please
there.
tell us
So
what
that's
the weather's like, John. That's what we want to know.
yes. And Paul is saying sat around the corner. And Hayley, that's my aunt. Oh, hi, Hayley. There you go. So always good when people are dropping in. So early careers. So did you have a job while you were at school, college, university, and if so, how has that helped you?
Well, so I didn't have a Saturday job for most of my kind of pre-university career, mostly because of running, because obviously you do a lot of competitions on a Saturday and training. But I did usually work in the summer holidays, and I'm sure we'll go on and talk about it. I did a law degree and had aspirations to become a solicitor. So I worked for 2 summers when I was 16 and then when I was 17 in a little local high street family law practice, which was really interesting and useful in giving me an idea of the day-to-day role of a solicitor and a lawyer. And then we were also joking about everybody needs to do some crap jobs just to show you the value of work. So a lot of the times at university, I actually worked in Burger King. And yeah, I do say it was one of the best jobs I ever had because
Really?
it was great fun. It was full of young people. It was a great vibe. You were really busy. Time flowed quickly. You got free food. And the after shift parties were quite legendary.
Oh, really? Okay. Did you end up smelling of like chips and stuff
Oh God,
though?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, I say you got free food, but obviously it was Burger King food. So
Yeah,
you just have the bun and the salad because there's only so many burgers and like fried products and things like that you can eat. Even
yeah,
as a student at university, you get a bit sick of it by the end.
yeah. Oh, very funny.
But yeah,
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and as you said, it's really useful for people to know those early jobs are actually really important, and it gives you kind of background into work, doesn't it? And you know how to deal with difficult customers, which I'm sure you probably must have dealt with, and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to running. So how did you get started in running?
well, I got started pretty much down the traditional route actually, so through school. And I always say to people, very recently, my mum found a photo of my first ever competitive race. It was this little tiny girl on the start line, but I always remember it was actually in the last year of primary school. And I always thought I was rubbish at running because all we did was sprint. And then we had a teacher who made us run the 800 meters, and I was quite good at it. And thought, got this number, got into the team, thought it was amazing. And then in secondary school again, did quite well on sports day. And some of the coaches from my local club said, "Do you want to come along and join the club?" And that really was that. Although I must do say, then I did drop out during university.
Okay.
I went on some party years, as I like to refer to them, the legendary parties at Burger King and student life, and didn't really run at all, did runs here and there. And then it was actually when I met my husband, and again, I tell this story a lot and say I'm quite competitive, and we were sitting, we'd only been together 2 or 3 weeks, and we were watching the London Marathon, and he said, I used to be quite good at running. And I said, I don't think you were as good as me.
Excellent.
I had to prove it to him. And that was it. That was my route back into running again.
Wow. Yeah, and was you better than him?
Well, at that point, I was still very much going to the pub a lot, and he's an officer in the military, and so he'd just finished off the training, so he was probably as super fit and the fittest he's ever been in his life. So he was better than me for a few years, but
not anymore. No.
Not anymore.
Okay. So Paul's saying he was the most consistent runner at his school, always came last. Oh,
that's it. You see, I talk a lot about this. I work with young athletes, and I would say to them, do you know what? It doesn't matter what you do at school. It's not actually a great predictor, particularly an endurance runner. Endurance running is actually how you mature into an adult. Then you've got a much better idea of how good or not you might be.
Excellent. So Paul could become an endurance runner, yeah. Okay. So how did you progress into becoming an elite athlete and representing GB?
I think there's no denying I was obviously had a degree of natural talent. You know, I did quite well while I was at school. And I reached, I got to the level. So when I was 16, I was ranked 3rd in the country for 800 meters for 16-year-olds. So I did quite well. And then, as I say, dropped out of the sport, came back into it quite recreationally during my postgrad. Again, there's a big theme of drinking and partying that runs along my elite running career, but within that sort of very social recreational running group. And then we moved, and I met my coach, and he's a man called Alex Stanton with his wife Rosemary, who coached Paula Radcliffe and a number of other really good women. And we just happened to move close to Bedford, which is where they're located. And so I thought, I'll go down the local running club, met Alec, and actually Paula and I, the 6 months between us, so we'd run against each other, albeit from different clubs, since we were 12 years old. So I knew that. And obviously Alex sort of knew me and recognised me, even though this was a few years later. But it was his influence. So Alec is somebody that's influenced my coaching and my approach. It's very much about you, people-centred, not about the results that you achieve. And he's somebody that just drops little seeds into your mind. So he just said, you could, if you could do a double day on a Saturday, or and just I joined him at 26, and within a year I'd made the final of the UK champs final with the 1500 meters from somebody that was not anywhere near that standard at that time, and 2 years later went to the Commonwealth Games. But it was really just Alex's guidance, his focus on enjoyment, just doing it because it makes you feel good about yourself. But obviously he had behind that was all this kind of knowledge and experience of the kind of training that you should be doing, and just the inspirational environment as well. So, just people talking about international teams and making international teams, but in a very, very supportive way, not aggressive or competitive, but actually just in a kind of, just inspiring way to do that. So it was really thanks to him.
Wow. And is he still your coach now?
I call him my coach. I mean, Alec hasn't written a training schedule for me for a very long time, but I also have referred to him as he's really more of a mentor and almost like a surrogate. Alec and Rosemary always like surrogate parents.
Yeah.
They've always been there, and he's just retired from coaching. He's 88, and Rosemary's 82, and they've just retired from coaching and they just have loved it all their lives. We have a group of, we call ourselves girls, we're all like 50 now, but we go back, we were going back every Christmas and meeting up with Alec and Rosemary. So it's still just somebody that's really important. And it was that creation of that culture, really positive, supportive, fun culture. And yet within that culture, people were achieving really high standards of running. Yeah. So I do call him my coach. Yeah. And I still have his voice ringing in my ears when I go off and try and do something stupid.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. And so, and you said that you've kind of built on what he coached you into your own coaching practice.
Definitely. The
Yeah,
approach that he had, that way that he always used to say, this is, this should be your hobby, you should enjoy it. Even when you're like, well, Alec, I'm trying to go to the European Championships. And it's like, I don't care, you should still enjoy it. And I think that is one of the fundamental things. Obviously, I learned a lot of the technical aspects of coaching, how to structure programs and things like that, just by osmosis, because
yeah,
I all those training programs over those years. So you obviously pick up and you get an idea of what works and what doesn't. And I always say I could pretty much write a program for myself, but I didn't really know why it worked. And it was only when I then went away and did my coaching qualifications that it kind of scaffolded this huge athlete experience I had and made me understand, that was why we did that, and this is why it's structured in that way, and that's why Alex said don't do this. So I kind of really loved that transition from all of the kind of experience, life experience and knowledge that I had as an athlete into actually then formulating that into understanding why, and also understanding how that might or might not apply to other people. You know how to coach yourself, yourself, and then obviously when you move to being a coach, you're not coaching yourself, you're coaching another person, and they're very different to you in all kinds of ways. So it's about trying to understand the knowledge and then how you might adapt it and apply it to each person that you then go on and coach. So definitely, so much of Alex's approach, his attitude, so that culture, are things that I've definitely embraced and use in my own practice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I can feel myself getting really distracted from the questions I actually need to ask you with all these other running questions now. But I mean, it sounds from what you're talking about then, trust is massively important, isn't it? You've got to be able to build trust between you and the people you're coaching.
Oh yeah, I would say coaching is actually it's a relationship. It's a relationship, and it's based on communication. You have to have technical knowledge behind it. So you have to understand physiology, you have to understand a bit of psychology, nutrition, all of these, biomechanics, all of these other things. You need that knowledge. But fundamentally, what makes the best coaches, and I'm fortunate now to meet a lot of coaches and across multi-sports as well, is that ability to engage with people and engage with each person on an individual way, in a different way, subtly different sometimes, but it's about that actually getting the best from people and saying that communication more than anything else. And to me, that's what makes coaching different from, a training plan. So I would say you can download a training plan from the internet for free.
Yeah.
Great. They're often quite robust. They're built on sound training principles. But what makes the difference in coaching is that you've got somebody there that can adapt that to you and adapt it as you go along as well. And you've got that kind of communication and that understanding of the individual and how they're responding to the training as you go along. So it is all about the relationship.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, before I get any more distracted, let's go on to how did you start your professional, and we will come back to talking about running again, but how did you start your professional career? So you mentioned that you wanted to be a solicitor.
Yeah. So when I looked at this question, I was like, which professional career are you referring to?
Yeah.
So I did. I for some reason at school, like you do, plucked a profession out of the air without really knowing much about it. I want to be a lawyer. That sounds really good and impressive, doesn't it? So did work in a solicitor's office, which was very interested in what they do day to day on a very small family practice. And I did a law degree, which I really loved. There were many reasons why I loved it. Again, which I can see the theme linked to coaching. Law is about problem solving. So you use the structure of the law and you solve a problem to get the outcome that you want for your client or whatever dispute you're kind of dealing in. But essentially it's about problem solving. And so I loved that side of it in terms of law. But when I came out of university, I didn't really want to go into a small family practice. And I didn't want to go into big corporate law, because I'm actually quite people orientated as well. And so I thought, I'm going to take a year out before law school. So I had my place at law school, but deferred it for a year and actually did a year's worth of voluntary work. So it was a national organisation. I think it's like National Citizenship now, but it wasn't called that then. It was called National Community Service Volunteers, and you got paid something ridiculous, like about £20 a week. And I got accommodation, and I worked in a hostel for 16 to 21-year-olds who were care leavers. So they'd been accommodated by the local authority, and obviously it was a kind of transition into their own independent accommodation. And obviously these young people didn't have families that could support them. It was absolutely a totally chaotic place. It was a real culture shock being thrown into, because you just lived there. You know, there were staff that came in during the day, but as a volunteer, we had 2 houses. One, it was in Kettering, one at either end of this road, and you were just in there with these young people and you know, doing all kinds of things from very troubled backgrounds, as you might expect. And but I kind of liked it. It was crazy, but I liked it, and it made me think I don't think I really want to go into law. So I then got a job working in homeless shelters in London. So working with the shelter I worked in was just off King's Cross. I always say it's before it was gentrified. I worked there all the time. I knew, you know, I was on kind of waving hello terms with all of the local prostitutes, drug dealers, alcoholics, everybody else, because you're there in that environment. But again, you know, just really enjoyed working with quite a challenging group. So men with a long history of homelessness, a long history of severe mental illness, and obviously a lot of drug and alcohol addiction as well. And liked it. You know, again, just really enjoyed the variety of it, enjoyed the interaction with people, and then thought, right, I'm going to, actually, I think social work is going to be a career that I want to go down. So I was very fortunate at that time. You know, we talked about my master's degree. Actually, at that point, the diploma in social work is the professional social work certificate, and you could do it either as a degree or a master's. And so I did it combined with a 2-year master's in applied social studies. And because it was a diploma in social work, it was actually a fully funded course. And so I was also fortunate that I got a maintenance grant as well. So obviously no course fees and a maintenance grant, and was a full-time student for 2 years. I was also quite fortunate, I just mentioned that I got married just before I started the course. So my long-suffering husband, in many ways, of which I have repaid him, kind of like, we got married and I instantly gave up my job and became a student again for 2 years.
Wow.
But yeah, so that was how I got into social work, and just really, there's lots of branches of social work, but I really, for some reason, I like adults. So it was always going to be working with adults, and I kind of really liked mental health as a field. So
Right.
that was the field that I went into.
There you go. Well, it shows the importance, doesn't it, of doing things like your placements over the summer, because had you not done that, you may well have just gone to law school and tried to, and then realised that you didn't like it.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it would have been okay, but I really enjoyed social work, albeit challenging, very challenging at times. But yeah, it's kind of, it was definitely something that appealed more to me and gave me a lot more satisfaction than I think law would have done.
Yeah, okay, that's good. And then you switched from social working into HR. So how long was you being a social worker, and then how did the switch
I mean, this is one of those ones where a switch sounds like it was terribly planned. It wasn't. It was an evolution.
Yeah.
So I was a social worker for, gosh, you always lose track of time, don't you? I think it was about 6 or 7 years. And then I had my son. And I guess one of the things that I probably should say, because it's really governed a lot of how my career has planned out, is obviously David was in the military and still is now. And one of the, one of the most significant factors in everything I've ever done as an adult is that we move house every sort of 18 months to 2 years. We move somewhere else. We don't always know where. We don't know how much notice we're going to get. We just up sticks and we go. And so that kind of accounted for leaving jobs. The good thing about social work was it was always a profession where there's a shortage. So wherever I turned up, I would sign up with an agency, get a job the next day, and usually within 3 to 6 months, I'd be a permanent member of staff at the local authority. So quite very transferable in that sense, a bit like being a nurse or something else like that. But in terms of the switch to HR, what happened was I left my last job because of having my son, and then was in that stage where I also kind of got back into running very seriously, much more quickly than I expected. So within 18 months of having Callum, I got my first ever Great Britain vest. So I was running really well as well, which made me think, well, I don't really want to do any anything that's going to sort of detract from my running, as it were. This is my last big chance. I was 32. I wanted to kind of give the running the best years that I've got, because I didn't really expect to get back to that level after I had my son, but obviously did. And again, I guess sometimes you meet the right people at the right time, don't you? But I also think you have to be the right person yourself. But the England Athletics was being set up, which is the governing body for athletics at that time. There'd been a structural change. And Peter Radcliffe, actually Paula Radcliffe's dad, said, well, we need some people, we need some women in particular, and we need some younger people to be involved in these regional councils. You have to be elected onto it. Would you like to do it? And I always say I was in a bit of a haze. Yeah, all right. Know what it is, I'll do it. And so got elected onto the regional council. I think Peter organised my campaign. Some people voted for me, I was on, and then started getting involved in the administration of the organisation. And then they were looking at, it was a time when safeguarding and welfare standards were starting to be rolled out into sport. So it was not long after the Bishard inquiry, which came after the Holly Wells and the Ian Huntley tragedy and the scandal. He was a school caretaker who murdered two young girls in Cambridge. And after that, the government looked at the criminal records checks and realised that actually we needed to improve criminal records checks of anybody that came into contact of children who potentially could be in a position of responsibility. So up to that point, even kind of teachers had their own list, but a lot of other professionals and a lot of other people who worked in environments with young children were completely unregulated, so they could be anybody. So they brought in criminal records, the CRBs, what they used to be, and they're now DBS. And what they also did then was bring safeguarding standards in, and they realised that within sport, outside of education, sport was the largest unregulated contact between adults and children. And we look back now and we see lots of scandals around various different coaches and historic sexual abuse that's kind of gone on with adults in positions of responsibilities, often coaches working with children. And so they were looking, England Athletics was charged, as were all of the sport governing bodies, to bring safeguarding standards into sport and to roll out CRBs, as they were then, and DBS's checks to any coaching and officials or people that were involved with children. And they needed somebody to do that. So because I had the background in social work, they actually, and obviously I was involved in the organisation, said, would you do, on a consultancy basis, would you help us with this project? So I started doing that. And then, again, I think the ability to kind of communicate and interact with people, the organisation wanted to bring its HR internal. At that time, it was doing it externally. And so the offer I got presented with was, would you like to manage our HR? You will have a legal HR consultancy backing you up with all the compliance with the law, but could you be the internal face of the organisation that manages it, and does all the kind of the interface between this external organisation and you knowing all the staff and everything. So I kind of slipped into it that way, really. And I said, HR, I remember somebody said to me, how do you think of HR and social work? And I said, to be honest, they're very similar. You're both working within a statutory framework. You're both working with people. And surprisingly, in HR, they still bring all their problems to work. So you're still dealing with that as well. So in some ways, I can't really see much difference. The main difference being I haven't sectioned anybody yet in HR. But, I just kind of always found it quite amusing. So I did that for years. So my joint role was welfare, which had become broader than safeguarding. I used to say it's welfare, head of complaints and problem solving, and our side of it as well. So it was a kind of, I slid along into HR without really meaning to.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. You just mentioned about your running had got really good again by this point. So how did you manage that athletics career alongside that? It must have been really challenging.
Well, you say that, but that was the benefit of working for the governing body, you see. So we
okay.
We have UK Athletics, and we worked. The organisation was very closely aligned, and so I basically, I was kind of working as a professional alongside people that were the performance manager and the team selectors, and so would see those people a lot. And I used to think, wow, UK Athletics, this is you're like my unofficial sponsor. So I used to literally rock up at their offices, dump my stuff. They had showers, you see, go for a run, do a training session during the day, come back, have a shower, go into the kitchen and drink all of their milk for post-run fueling. And then sort of turn up all professional to manage some HR meetings.
Excellent.
They were extremely accommodating of my time. Having said that, there were times when I worked really hard and probably more hours than I should have done because I was quite passionate about the job.
Yeah.
But I also had huge flexibility because athletics was their thing. To, I could do my training sessions during the day, particularly in the winter. I would often just go out for a couple of hours and do it. And so in that sense, I was really, really fortunate that it worked really well.
Yeah, it must have been really good to be part of that whole kind of investigation, and not investigation so much, but stopping those kind of issues again, the whole position of power thing. I know it's obviously very topical at the moment in the UK in the media, but just...
Yeah, I mean, it was... the only thing I find sometimes is when you mix something you love with something when you're in a professional role, sometimes you see the warts and all and behind the curtain side of it. So there's that aspect sometimes. It didn't very often cause problems, but I always did feel quite passionate around safeguarding and respect for people. I find it interesting now. I was working for England Athletics up to 2010. It was a time when we were preparing for the 2012 Olympics. There was a huge amount of money and funding that had come into sport generally, and a huge buzz in the build-up to the Olympics. So it was a great time to work for them. It's interesting now looking back, and some of the characters who were around at that time within athletics and also some of the other sports, when they look back now in that period, and there's a lot of debate around athlete welfare, and sport is amazing, winning medals is amazing, but also and sport is competitive. It has to be, elite sport is competitive by its very definition, but there's that kind of ethical line around where does it become ultimately damaging to people. It is an amazing thing, but it can also be quite damaging, and sometimes cultures and systems can be quite not always perhaps supportive. They can be perhaps quite driven. So it's kind of interesting to reflect back a little bit on that.
No, good. Okay, and then you switched into another different sector, so armed forces. How did that happen?
Well, again, I had another baby.
Okay.
I had my second child, and just thought, what should I do work-wise? I'm not very good at not working, and thought, it wasn't really quite clear how to get back into athletics as such, in that administrative side. And I did actually think I might go back into social work, and rather sadly, teaching and nursing, there seems to be return to practice, but within social work there doesn't seem to be any structured return to practice. So obviously my registration had lapsed years ago, and obviously I would just assume they expect you never come back. So I kind of looked at, to get the registration back, I did an OU course just to get the kind of CPD, necessary CPD, but it was still a bit unclear how I was going to get the practice and stuff. So that was what I was thinking, right, I might go back into social work. And then literally on Facebook, this advert came up for the Family Federation, for the RAF Family Federation. We are an RAF family. We still are now. We have been for many years. I'm very familiar with all of the challenges that being a family where you've got a service person within the family that can bring. And it was home-based, part-time. So I've got a lot of experience. I've got a lot of lived experience, which is what they wanted. So it was kind of it just was the right job at the right time. And it was an interesting job. Again, I had a kind of vested interest in it, in how the job was essentially policy and influencing. So networking and influencing, working from government departments. So I used to work predominantly with Department of Health and Department for Education, looking at the kind of disadvantages that service families experience as a result of it being armed forces families. So particularly, as I mentioned, we moved house a lot. So very much for my kids, every time we move, we have to apply for a new school. And that's a really challenging thing to do. Sometimes you could get them in straight into the local school. It was great. We had a really difficult experience with my daughter, where lovely area, affluent area, 5 outstandingly performing schools, one really, really not one school that had, several notices approved, and obviously that was the only one spaces, and that's where they
Yeah.
put it the furthest away from our house, and just felt, I would say everybody worries about their kids getting into the right school, but you only worry once and then you don't tend to move. If you're moving
Yes.
every 18 months. So, my children through primary school went to 5 different schools each,
Wow.
as an example.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of other examples where just the nature of service life can impact on families. So it was kind of working very much in that kind of influence, both central government, but also local authorities as well. So did a lot of work with NHS Trust, various different local authorities, those kind of organisations. But essentially it was talking to people.
Yeah. So there's a definite theme. Yeah. There's a definite theme, isn't there, to all of your careers, all of your different roles. Okay. So what was it then that gave you the confidence to set up your own sports coaching business?
So it was, David, my husband, had said to me for many years, you should get into coaching. And I said, I'm not getting into coaching, I'm running, I haven't got time to coach. Yeah. And I injured myself, foolishly attempting yet another comeback without the guidance of my coach, hence why I injured myself and was sort of annoyed about it, I think is the understatement. And at that point, UK Athletics were relaunching their athlete coach program. So any athlete that's gone to major championships, to try and keep those athletes within the sport and, train them to become a coach. And that literally dropped into my email inbox. I'm sitting there all depressed and frustrated. And I thought, well, I'm not running, so I might as well do this coaching course. And just loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was that thing where it's like, wow, I didn't realise all of that. I didn't know that. And just loved the whole communication of people thing. Loved this whole scaffolding, the knowledge that I talked about. Just thought this is really great. And I also, at the same time, it was over a course of sort of 8 months, this course, and at the same time was feeling a bit fed up with my job at the Families Federation. It's kind of run its course. I'd been there 5 years, just was feeling a bit stale, and just fortuitously, they needed to adjust their staffing budgets. And so they needed to make some people redundant. Now I'm not going to lie, I felt quite bitter about it. Redundancy is always quite a hard thing, even though I didn't really like.
Even when you actually want it. Yeah.
I wanted to leave. But what it did was, say, it literally kicked me out the door. So, otherwise I think I would have done a half-hearted attempt to go down the business route. Kicked me out the door. I had some money, which was really nice. I had a redundancy payment. And also, again, all of that work I'd done on armed forces policy, one of the things we do know with armed forces families, and in particular women that are married to people in the armed forces, that they tend to be underemployed and they find employment a difficult thing to secure because of the mobility. So through the Ministry of Defence, there was a business startup program called Unsung Heroes, and it was a 4-day business course, full days of business startup kind of training, and also a year with a business mentor. And so I signed up for that course, and that was really that was one of those kind of pivotal points where I thought, wouldn't it be nice to set up a coaching business? I guess you just do a bit of coaching and someone pays you for it. And actually going on the course was this kind of, again, this whole eye-opening thing around, okay, starting up a business there's a lot to it. And I'm somebody, you either do it properly or don't do it.
Yeah.
It's just, I learned so much in the course of those 4 days, they've spread over a couple of weeks, but in the course of that time, just really, learned a lot about what is a business, how to structure a business, how to market your business, so many practical things that have mean I am where I am now, basically. And so really, without that course, I don't think my business would be as successful as it is, because I just wouldn't have learned all of the things that I needed to learn. And it's certainly, again, those people in business say it, but you often don't always appreciate it, that 50% of your time is running the business. 50% of your time is doing the thing that you love, that you set the business for, but the other 50% of the time has to be running the business. Unfortunately, I actually really like running the business side as well. I've enjoyed that as much as I enjoy the coaching.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
I really do enjoy it. I didn't think I would. I'm still not brilliant at accounts, but I'm now in a position where I have an accountant, so I don't need to worry about that. But just just really liked the whole challenge of just how to structure it, how to set it up, how to grow it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of, that gave me a lot of confidence. And just to say, being kicked out the door so I could go all in, rather than that where you try and set it up in your spare time, which I think a lot of people do. I was fortunate. We had David's income, we had secure accommodation, I had the money from the redundancy that enabled me to have that bit of a security cushion. But we basically agreed, right, I'll do this for 2 years. If it doesn't work, I'll get a job.
Yeah.
And here I am, 5 years later.
It works. Excellent. That's good.
It's
Very good. It's working. So what is it that you enjoy about your work?
I mean, I jokingly said to you, everything.
Yeah.
Everything about it. Yeah, I just do. I love the coaching side. You know, that ultimately is my passion. I love coaching people. I love seeing people grow and develop, and just get the satisfaction. And I do fundamentally really love running. You know, there's so much about it. I love the headspace. I love the sense of achievement. I love going out on your own, meeting nobody, or being in a social group, all of that. And I love, you know, I've always been quite competitive. I love it when you feel like you've really exceeded your expectations. And I would say I now get to, I get to vicariously have all of that satisfaction without having even to strap on a pair of trainers anymore. So I kind of like that side. I like sharing that sense of achievement with people. I obviously love the engagement. I love the fact, because I run my own business now, I spend a lot of time on CPD, so I do lots of, research and courses. I'm often geeking out over some bit of coaching theory and practice, and I've got the flexibility, obviously, to structure my time to allow me to do that.
Yeah.
But I also like the business side of it as well. I really enjoyed, it was a lot more hard work. It was a lot more time consuming than I ever thought it would be. But again, that's kind of problem solving, isn't it? Trying to, create, I put a lot of work into creating the brand and the identity of Running Jo. Creative stuff, the sort of website. I run my Instagram profile very much, again, thinking about how did I want that to look and feel and come across and engage with people. That side of planning. So, I very early on realized I need to track who are the people that come to me. What do they look like? That whole idea of there is a definite person that comes to me to be coached, and there was a definite person that I also actually kind of deliberately tried to attract as well. And so, then marketing, did quite a few pieces of work around looking at, well, where do people come? How long do they stay for? Why did they come to me? How did they find me? So I could almost kind of map that sort of growing kind of networking out. And I really like that side of it. And I like the fact, it is successful, and I'm quite proud of that. I often get a bit shy about it, but and you think, oh, it's not really the done thing to talk about money, but it is a business that's grown. It tripled its turnover from year one. It tripled its turnover to year two. It doubled it again in year three, and it's still at the moment continuing to grow. So I'm kind of trying to think, actually, I should be
That's
really
amazing.
proud. That is an achievement. That doesn't just happen.
No.
There's a lot of work that went into it. So I enjoy that side. I enjoy the business side as well.
Yeah.
Almost as much as I enjoy the coaching.
Yeah, excellent. And it's good to hear you say about that 50% of the thing you love, the coaching, but 50% is the business as well. And I think probably that's the thing that most people don't necessarily appreciate when they set up their own business. It's the amount of time you need to invest in all the admin, all of the accounts, all of that kind of stuff, isn't it? The marketing.
Yeah. And when you start out as well, and you're just like a one-woman band, you kind of also think, oh, you realise you have to spend money to get money back as well.
Yes.
I started out, God, the thought of having an accountant, just, that'd be like, so much money. And then you realise that, well, so I'm still a very small operation, but I have an accountant who does bookkeeping. I have somebody who does administration for me. So, you realise that you can only expand turnover by spending money on these other things, spending money on the website, etc., and the kind of website and IT support that I get from the company that I work with there. So, it's bringing all these people in. But one thing I always do remember from the business course that I went on, and the guy, he's a real marketing character, not my kind of person at all. But I always think, even if someone's not your kind of person, you can still learn, and you can often learn a lot more from them, because if you just mix with people like you only ever get your perspective, don't you? If you mix with people that are not like you, and he was a real marketing person, and I always remember he said, it's either a business or a hobby, and the difference is one makes no difference. So if you want to make money, it has to be a business. If you just want to do a hobby, that's lovely, go away and do your hobby, but don't pretend it's a business. And I did, at the time you think, oh, that's a bit stark, but actually it's really true. If it's a business, it has to make money for you, otherwise it's not.
Definitely.
You make a mega box, and you don't have to be unscrupulous or all of that. You can be ethical and principled and structure it in the way you want, but it's still got to make money, or it's not a business.
Yeah, definitely. That's very good. You've just sort of touched on this a little bit, but I normally talk to people about their values. So do your personal values have an impact on type of organisation that you will work with or the clients that you will take on?
Absolutely, 100%. So I come from a very traditional background in athletics, where everyone's a volunteer. My coach was a volunteer and never paid him a penny. And that's still a very strong culture within athletics. In fact, I remember talking to my business mentor throughout the year, and she was saying, well, as you get more successful, you can coach better athletes that will go to the Olympics and things, and you'll get paid more. And I said, no, it's not there, because in athletics, the better the athlete, the less you get paid. That's just how it works. It's a really weird market. But I did understand that market incredibly well.
Yeah.
But there's also again, I came up with this whole way that Alec coached me around. It's about a relationship, and therefore you have to limit the number of people that you coach if you want to coach in the way that you want to coach. And I very clearly wanted to coach in that model where it's about communication, it's about interaction. And so there has to be a limit on the number of people, one-to-one people that you take on. I do other bits of work in other formats that are slightly different, but the kind of coaching business side of it is very much, about that relationship. And what I didn't want to be was, as there are some people in this field who it's one size fits all, you get one plan, it's not really fitted to you and your life. And particularly because the people I coach a lot of women, I coach a lot of women similar age to myself. And I achieved my own athletic, I achieved running for Great Britain when I had a son that was preschool age, a husband that was away for 6 months at a time in Iraq or Afghanistan, absolutely juggling everything and working as well. So, but could still get the best out of my career. And the reason I could is because we've just adapted my training to fit my lifestyle. And so again, that's for me, it's like I can, you're not just getting one plan, you're not on the same plan as other people. There might be similarities because you might be both targeting the same race, and I think that you want to do certain types of sessions, but your session will still be, it might be slightly shorter, the pace that you are might be different, or we move it around. So it was very much about being professional, credible, kind of ethical as well. Again, I've got quite a strong feeling that it's not win at all costs. It's not worth destroying yourself to win in sport, even at the top level. It's not worth it. Almost everybody turns around at the end and says that wasn't worth it, if they've really destroyed themselves. So it wasn't about that. It was and it was about being credible as well. If I can't be credible in what I do, then I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Okay, so start to wrap up now. Conscious that I've still got so many questions, but so have you got any advice for people, women in particular, who wanted to get into sports coaching?
I think I'd say for women in particular, going back to the earlier question you asked me, don't let confidence or lack of it hold you back, because I think it does so often. So it's fine to have doubts. I have loads of doubts, but go out and do things and try them, because actually nobody really cares if you fail. And there might be a financial implication, but it's not the end of the world, and you'll never know unless you try. I think for women in coaching, I really was trying conscious. Actually, I do try to be quite visible and say, look, women do coach, women can coach, and we can coach at the top level as well. We don't just have to coach other women and children, we can coach men, and we can coach at a performance level, so just try and be more visible. I think I say to women that want to get into coaching, I didn't really know what I was doing, But actually what I did was just go to my local athletics club and say, I'm doing a coaching course. I don't really know what I'm doing, but would you like me to coach you, as long as you don't mind if we kind of evolve it as we go along? So I just went and asked everybody, got a few people, and the more people you coach, the more you develop your experience of how things actually work in practice or don't work, and how people are different. So just go out there and try it, and talk to people. So I now, I do talk to everybody and anybody, not just in coaching, and a lot of aligned fields, not just in athletics coaching, but in other types of coaching. I think you learn, a bit like I said, from that marketing guy, wasn't my kind of guy, but learn from him that were really, really valuable. I do a lot of coaching. I do some business networking. We were talking about that as well, saying, I did that in the early days as well, because I realised I needed to know about business. So I went along to business networking and talked to people, other people that ran their own businesses. So I think just go out and try it. Don't expect to know it all at once. And don't have lack of confidence because you don't know it all. Because often I find if you just say to people, I don't know, you get a lot more credibility and respect. And actually, you'll probably get the answers, or you probably will develop your knowledge from that way.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. And then just about your business, really. So are you taking on clients at the moment? If you are, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So in terms of one-to-one clients, I am and have been very fortunate for the last couple of years to pretty much operate on a one-in, one-out basis.
Okay.
I will say to people, and I don't hold a waiting list or anything like that. It's a little bit too complicated and all the rest of it. So sometimes it's luck of the draw. I may, around this period of time, most people I coached in marathons, and there's a cycle to the year. So around now, but to be honest, not now, because I've already, all my ones out have been filled by ones in. I do some other coaching for businesses. So I work with a couple of companies in London, and I run just little running programs for small groups of staff. So usually kind of 6 to 8 people. We've done beginners to 5K. We've done improving your 5K, 10K. So I do kind of packages as well for businesses. So yeah, that's the kind of thing where I have a little bit more capacity rather than the one-to-one. So if anybody thinks, and I we have some great times. I have to meet and run from the city. We'll have a really great lunchtime, and then there's actually loads of evidence to say that if you go outside of your organisation, and particularly if you do exercise and activity, then you actually come back and you're a lot more productive. So I say, well, we might go out for the hour, but as long as you've got somewhere to change, or if you've got a good change of clothes and deodorant, it's all fine. And if you've all been running, you're all sitting there sweating in the afternoon together, that kind of thing have got a little bit of capacity for.
Okay, excellent. And via Instagram, is the best way for people to get in touch?
Actually, so yeah, runningjo.co.uk is the best way. But you can get in touch with me on Instagram.
That is your Instagram page there.
Yeah. And obviously via LinkedIn as well. These days I find there's so many ways to get in touch, and I'm available on the end of all of them.
Excellent. Okay, that's brilliant. So thank you so much, Jo, for talking today. It's been really, really interesting to kind of hear about how your career, and definitely see the threads through everything you've done. So it's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as I said, anyone that's watching on replay, please do ask us some questions. Paul's saying, I've just put this up without actually reading it, so it's probably unwise, but he's saying, thank you for everything you've done for Sarah in the lead up to Chicago. I've loved seeing her so committed to training plan and hearing about it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to be back on the next Thursday with Tina Java, who is career strategy consultant. So she's a headhunter based in Brussels. So I'm very much looking forward to talking to her as well. So thanks again, and I will see you next week.
Bye.
Okay.